Hello, and welcome to Green Biz Studio. My name is Lori Gustavus, and I'm the Director of Green Biz in Europe, and I'll be your host today. I am honored to bring you Salesforce's Vice President of Climate Action, Tim Christophersen. Hey, Tim. Thanks so much for spending some time with us this afternoon. How are you?
It's a pleasure. Very good. And you?
I'm doing well. I'm coming in live from Paris. What about you? Where are you dialing in from?
I'm on our family farm in rural Denmark. Salesforce work from anywhere policy.
That's right. Green Biz too. Wonderful. Well, I'm really excited to let our community in on our conversation today, Tim, because I've gotten to know you a little bit in the past few months, and I can tell everyone this is a man on a mission. So, Tim, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about this innate drive that you have.
So throughout my career for the last 20 years, I've always worked on the interface of nature and climate. How can we stabilize the climate and save nature at the same time? That has led me through 15 years at the United Nations, where I was until early 2022, and then joined Salesforce as Vice President of Climate Action. I lead our nature team, including our pioneering effort for the 1 Trillion Trees initiative. That is one of our flagship signature issues at Salesforce, that we want to add about a third to the world's trees to either conserve, grow, or restore 1 trillion additional trees. And we need everybody on board for that. All the companies at GreenBiz, all the governments. It's a global collective effort.
Wonderful. Well, indeed, Salesforce is leaning into biodiversity and nature in a big way, in addition to climate. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the future holds for Salesforce?
In general, I'm very optimistic about the future because the world just adopted a new global biodiversity framework, which is the Paris Agreement's equivalent for biodiversity. For us at Salesforce, nature and climate are inextricably linked. Mm-hmm. We see nature-based solutions as possible solution for about a third of the climate problem. We invest a lot in nature-based solutions, carbon credits of the highest quality. We launched in October a net zero marketplace where anybody can find the highest quality projects. We believe that the voluntary carbon market has an important role to play, and that any company, not only us, needs to also consider carbon credits as a last but not later option in their climate action portfolio. We need more climate action across the board, that's clear. We also need more nature action, and we can combine both of those in our investments, in our grant making, and through our technology, of course, at Salesforce.
Curious to hear more about what are the risks for businesses that are not, creating that convergence of, nature and climate.
In a nutshell, there's distinct risks from nature and from climate for businesses. Of course, these are being mapped out for climate through the Task Force on Carbon-Related Financial Disclosures. And that methodology, there's an equivalent for nature called the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, which we are piloting here at Salesforce. That will be finally launched as a product, the Global Task Force, in September 2023. So there are material risks for a lot of businesses, of course, in particular in the consumer goods industry, in the food industry, where supply chains reach deeply into nature. And at the end of the day, we're all dependent on nature. There is no substitute for a healthy biosphere. There's no substitute for a stable climate. So companies that don't act on this risk not only to overlook material financial dependencies and risks for their future, but right now they also risk to lose out on what is probably the biggest business opportunity of this century. Saving the planet is going to be massive business. It already is the fastest growing energy transition. It's the fastest growing investment area in agriculture, in regenerative agriculture. So don't risk to lose out would be more my advice, rather than to look at the risks that could impact you from a destabilizing climate and from nature loss, which are also enormous.
Absolutely, there are lots of opportunities, right, to be seized. And so, how can we accelerate, this movement, the net zero movement? Can you tell us more about that?
So we're about to reveal our nature positive strategy here at Salesforce and give you a sneak
Mm,
preview that it's about a just transition to a net zero nature positive world, because nature positive is a term that we can only achieve collectively. It makes sense for us as a global community to be a nature positive society and economy. This is not something that any individual company can do, but every company has to play a role. If we look at what's at stake, we have to reverse nature loss by 2030. All the governments of the world have just agreed to that in December. And we have to halve emissions by 2030. That's an enormous challenge. Emissions have to go down by at least 6% per year. And at the moment, they're still going up. So we are beyond incremental change now. We have to
mm.
reach deep into the innovation pools that we have in the private sector, into our financial power to make the transformational shifts we need. Only about a third of the 2,000 largest companies in the world have a science-based climate target. That is unacceptable. Everybody needs to have one. But of course, once you have one, you need tools to help you monitor, measure, report, and identify the climate solutions that you have at your disposal. That's where we have Net Zero Cloud in our offering. And what excites me about Salesforce is with our hundreds of thousands of customers, if we can give them the tools to better monitor, measure, and ultimately manage nature and their climate footprint, this will have a major impact for a net zero and nature positive world. So in my view, accelerating this transition has to do with technology and the right tools in the toolbox, like Net Zero Cloud. And we're just going live with a solution called Automate ESG Reporting, which allows companies to go beyond their carbon footprint and also draw on social and governance information from across the company for their reporting. We will also build Net Zero Cloud into more of the environmental aspects like biodiversity, like water, like waste, so that companies have a one-stop shop tool at their disposal to accelerate that necessary transition to a net zero, nature positive world. Everybody needs to be on that transition. Most companies already are on that transition. If you're not, it's a good time to start today.
I use the term nature positive, and that trips up a lot of people. There's a lot of debate about the use of this term. Would you like to weigh in on the debate?
We have to realize that these terms always, of course, have the risk that people project too much into them. Nature positive is underneath that very simple term, an immensely complex undertaking of monitoring biodiversity, changing your ecological footprint, and reducing the negative impacts that we have throughout our supply chains as large companies on the planet. That is a very complex and complicated science, but we have enormous advances just in the last few years in remote sensing, in measuring biodiversity through soil, air, and water samples. So it is possible now for us to have the data and analyze that data in a way that makes it easy for companies to know what is my footprint on nature, what is my climate footprint, and then report those footprints, but more importantly, identify where can we and how can we identify the best and deepest emission reduction options, the best options to become less nature negative. I mean, who wants to be nature negative, right? It's a relatively simple term, but underneath that is a very, very complex range of methodologies and data collection and management challenges that we are exploring together with some of our customers, how we can make that easier for the entire world's private sector.
Tim, you meet with a lot of corporate peers. What are some of the most pressing challenges for organizations that that you're talking about these days?
Climate change has certainly risen up to the top of the sustainability to-do list for almost all companies. For us and for many, that is increasingly linked to nature and nature-based solutions and their nature impact. But if we look at climate change, it is not only the most urgent issue facing many companies, it's also one of the largest opportunities that companies now starting to see, whether you're in automotive, whether you're in retail, finance, every sector is starting to transition to net zero practices and is starting to invest in the industry of the future that will have trillions of dollars of opportunity for constructing basically a new way of doing business in the world. For us, a part of that new market is a multi-billion-dollar nature conservation and restoration market that we see emerging. We were together in Montreal. You saw there's a lot of launches of investment funds that are specialized on nature-based solutions. So that is one part of the climate solution. There are many other aspects where companies can now have huge opportunities and realize huge gains by doing the right thing. I think that's, for me, the most exciting learning when speaking with our peers and sustainability teams, that shift from seeing ESG and sustainability just as a risk or as a cost to seeing it as a major opportunity, that shift has now gotten hold of most of the world's large companies. So once again, don't lose out. Be part of the net zero and nature positive transition that the planet needs.
Wonderful. Tim, thank you again for joining us today. You've just heard from Tim Christophersen, VP Climate Action at Salesforce here in the Green Biz studio.